It should be said that a deleted tweet is in circulation. Many outlets have reported on this, and it seems as though John has implicated himself, although he is not referencing Feb 21st or a hit and run of any kind. He has posted this and then deleted it. It says, "Whoever was on the phone with me at first, his timestamp is different. By the time I was acting aggressive on the phone, it was a completely different conversation. I was already in my paranoid and defensive state." Now, that appears to be referencing the body cam footage we were just discussing. Obviously, that is not confirmed. It is now deleted. But I think I've set the table enough, and we are safe to bring in the great Chuck Mendelon, the great Ben Folks. Lads, I am glad to see you. That was a long introduction, and you know I was not looking
You were
forward to doing
handling it though, man. You handled that. That
Crushed it.
yeah, this is one of those situations where the used to always say this is a lot to unpack.
Hmm.
That this I think this qualifies.
Yes. I mean, this is crazy. I don't even know where to begin, Ben. You've been tweeting up a storm about this yourself, but since Saturday, what a crazy, chaotic scene it has been around Jones. These allegations, he's tweeting up a storm. I believe we have some examples of that. We can get into that in a minute. But this is pretty unhinged stuff.
Isn't it also kind of maybe the most fitting way for Jon Jones to go out? Because honestly, people have been asking this question for a while now as it's looked more and more like he is not going to fight Tom Aspinall, where people are like, how much does this stain his legacy? How much will we remember that Jon Jones, who, might have been one of the greatest fighters we've ever seen, left when he still had a big challenge on the table and decided instead to retire? And now I think you also have to ask the question, how does it look to go into retirement like this, where it's not just that you're avoiding Tom Aspinall, it's also that you've got this controversy hanging over your head, and a controversy that is so similar to many instances we've seen Jon Jones get himself into. Like the whole thing, getting in a car, being accused of getting into a car crash and running off. We've seen him do that before. Making these threats against people. We've heard him accused of that before. That thing with the drug tester, the drug test collection agent that happened not that long ago, basically accused of of doing the same stuff there. And to go out like this honestly feels like, yeah, that I guess is how it should go. That should remind us that this stuff too was a part of Jon Jones's story. Like those are the two parts of Jon Jones's story, is that he was an amazing fighter inside the cage, and he was always his own biggest obstacle throughout his entire career. I think one of the things that we'll remember about Jon Jones, in addition to how great he was as a fighter, was that he left a lot on the table because of the years of his prime he missed for one misbehavior or another, and stuff like this that's clouding people's ability to just appreciate the athletic talent. That's all part of the story. And the fact that he goes out like this, that feels like, okay, yeah, maybe that will help people remember all of it and not just the highlights, which sometimes tends to be how it is once a few years pass.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that the pattern is so established that when you started this off like, this is fitting, right? And it's not surprising. Like it's the kind of thing when you see it, you're like, well, of course.
Yeah.
It's like the devil on one shoulder, the angel on the other. Of course, you're going to go through both sides of this because we've never had a real moment where Jon Jones doesn't have that other side to him, right? Like he's always in trouble. There's always something, to the point where I was speculating, like a lot of people, like you're like, these things are too coincidental to come out at the same time. It's almost like he's announcing his retirement just to get in front of the other thing, or the headline will be, less whatever. Like, but then you find out from Ariel, who talked to Jeff Grammer, I think it was from the Albuquerque paper, who said it was coincidental. He just went and looked to see if Jon Jones had been in any trouble, found out that he had, and then that became a story around the same time. But man, this is just one of those patterns where I think for us, the people who followed him the whole way since he, debuted way back 17 years ago, it's very difficult to hear him and his excuses and to see, the tweets that come out, all the things, all the kind of almost self-sabotage, the guilty things, the things he does, and then the sincerity the other way of you know, I'm leading the best life, and I do all these things for whatever, like, and then you just keep going around and around in the circle. It's it's such a pattern that I feel like now, you know, the one thing is he won't have the balance. He won't have the balance of being a champion. He won't have the balance of fighting, and that's scary.
Yeah.
Frankly.
Well, okay. You know, first of all, you mentioned the Albuquerque Journal getting on this story and saying they just put his name in there to search, since why not when the news comes that he retires. I do want to shout out JOTY Suzanne Davis over there on Blue Sky, because she was on this one. She kind of threw it up there right as this was happening, where she was like, "Oh, by the way, Jon Jones has another criminal charge hanging over his head." She was the first one that I saw to really kind of get on that. So shouts out to Suzanne Davis, Susie Koozie over there. But she also, you know, like, you could see why somebody would be like, "Hey, might as well just check," because it's not like it would be unheard of.
It's like checking a hot table in blackjack. You're like, let me just throw a chip on there and see.
Well, and the thing is too, like you said, where he knew this happened in February. He knew all this time that he'd been out here tweeting about, like, "Hey guys, I'm just living my best life. Everything is going great. I'm monetizing this amazing personal brand that I've built. I've grown so much as a person." He was doing all that when he knew that this had happened. He knew that this was kind of like hanging over his head, and he was still trying to like tell us, like, "I'm not ducking anybody, man. I'm just living such a wonderful, blessed, relaxed, amazing life." And it was like, I don't know, man. Because we heard you on, it sure sounds like you, on a body cam footage, and then you're kind of going out there and saying it was you, immediately going to, "I can have you killed. I know people that can have," like, it's amazing how quickly he seems to go to that as just like a go-to thing that you say in a conflict with somebody over the phone. Like that right there is alarming, that's just one of the first things off the top of your head. But to have like all that going on while you were telling us you've grown so much as a person, no, man, it seems, if anything, that you've regressed. Like
I know.
you're the same kind of guy, but worse in a lot of ways. And then to imagine, like, like, you're his lawyer, you put out that statement, "I can't understand why they'd be going after my client's phone records for a misdemeanor traffic charge. Never seen anything like this." And then they put out the video where, you know, over the phone he seems to be threatening an officer, and then you're telling yourself, maybe as his lawyer, well, maybe they won't be able to prove that was him. And then you wake up one morning and you see the man's been on Twitter all night long and basically admitted it was him. Yes,
there's the Ben Folks tweet.
Yeah.
Imagine being his lawyer and waking up and realize that your client just admitted. Can we get the other tweets? And On Air Jordan has such a hard job today, because it started off with, like, I sent him one tweet and then I sent him all of these. And I mean,
Look at this.
It is insane what we're dealing with here. Like, this is some pretty crazy stuff. Crazy coincidence. Bob Marley said, "Don't worry."
He did say that. I did.
That part is true. That's verifiable.
"I've been crying. I'm okay with that. I'm alive. Old man and still a chicken. I'm okay with that. You can't catch me. Dream on. And I'm not even done talking shit. LOL." Later deleted. Change me by thinking about this riddle. The guy in the brown jacket. Here, take my phone. He went that way. If people start getting away with this, it's going to start a free-for-all. Intelligence. I guess when you have a voice, you should use it. I mean, this is very cryptic, chaotic, and, like, I mean, he seems unhinged.
Have we ever had so many dark glimpses into a fighter's mind? You know what I mean?
No.
Remember when he was banging his head on the police car in Vegas right after?
That was fucked up, man.
I mean, just stuff like that. The first time he ever really came in, where you're like, "This is a dude with a Janus face." Like, it just switches. Like, like, was when the Cormier backstage thing. Do you remember that? Like, and then the footage came out.
I think we all remember that one. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's one of those things. I mean, that was really what put the heat behind that rivalry and made it into such a big deal. But you could just how chilling and weird Jon Jones got out of nowhere. It was like the camera's on, and then it just went dark as soon as, like, it's crazy to catch these glimpses. And when he does this sort of thing, especially like you're mentioning, Ben, like, his brothers are high profile. If that's who he's talking about, his brothers are high profile athletes. One of them who had a pretty psychological breakdown himself, Chandler Jones, but he's kind of throwing them into these conversations. It's bizarre and dark and just how casual.
Did you take that to mean his actual literal brothers? Because I thought we were saying brothers as in good friends. And frankly, if I was one of his brothers, I would want to come out and be like, "Guys, I think he was talking about friends."
I do feel like he has his enablers got to be his enablers have to be a special kind of person to kind of go through with all this. So if that's the brother, if those are the brothers he's like referring to, yeah, I wouldn't put it past him, because that's a lot to deal with all the time with Jon Jones, to protect him and let him just kind of continue to be a two-faced dude, like, you know, who's just going to live this life. I mean, and clearly he has that. He has enablers in Albuquerque.
One of
Well, he's had enablers his entire career, basically, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, that's how we've gotten here in a way, is that like he's been able to do this stuff and face no consequences, just because there's so many people who have a financial interest in keeping him busy, keeping him fighting, and making sure that he's shielded from consequences. And so that's how you end up in a situation like this, where like he kind of feels like he can keep doing this stuff and nothing's going to happen to him.
one person who definitely isn't one of his enablers is Derek Brunson, who had this tweet to put out earlier today. Jon Jones and I used to hang out just about every day when I was in town from 2011 to 2014. One day we went out and I said to him, "Bro, why are you doing all this? Let's just hang out with the ladies and have fun. The extra stuff isn't needed. They're already here with us." He looked at me and said, "I don't need a dad, I need a friend." This was the last time we hung out. I couldn't sit back and watch. I have to be honest with my friends. I mean, this is like, I can't stop thinking about what you just said at the top of this, Chuck, when you're like, he doesn't have the thing to balance himself out now. Like, and this seems like I think it's fair to say that those tweets appear to be from someone who was intoxicated in some kind of way. I think it would be a fair estimate to make. And then you have like, people used to say this about Connor as well. Like, at least if you get him into camp, he has to clean up. Like, he has to clean himself up and he has to stay straight. The risk factor in what this man does for a living, he has to tune in. He has to do everything right. We know that hasn't been the case historically. We know that the first Gustafsson fight, he openly said, I was partying all the way through that. Like, this. I know it's dark already, but this could get a lot darker, right?
Yeah, I think it could. You know what, man? For years, I think behind the scenes, you talk to people and they have these concerns. Like anybody who's been around, but I've always kind of, and I don't want to be irresponsible, man. Like, but I've always wondered if he's slightly sociopathic. I mean, only in the sense that if you go back to the earliest times, and I told you guys, I think when we were talking about him last time, the first time I interviewed him was right after he beat, the first time I really sat down with, right after he beat Mauricio Shogun Hua, and I remember he went on this whole rant about I would never be sponsored by Budweiser or any kind of alcohol that would just send the wrong message to my fans, and just so goody two shoes. And I remember joking, how did you end up in the fight game? Because we're at this time he's the pastor son, he just caught a purse snatcher and all this, and he laughed, whatever. We turned the digital recorder off and we're just kind of sitting there wrapping it up, and he's like, "Man, I am high as hell right now." And I was like, "Oh my God. Like, how do I even approach this?" Because I didn't,
Wow.
I didn't suspect any of that. But that's just the one example. I mean, this is just, but it's kind of the mimicry of a moral compass. It's the mimicry of emotion, where you can't find the genuine person. You can't find it. The zero fear of consequence, the repeated patterns, the kind of egotism that goes into. I mean, there are a lot of weird signs that you can point to. I don't know if that's it, but man, he demonstrates some strange behaviors, and I thought if by the time he got into this portion of his career 10 years ago, for instance, like if he's in the tail end of his 30s, you were hoping he'd straighten it out, but it doesn't seem like that's even a possibility right now. It just seems like this is who he is.
Yeah, and doesn't seem. I remember thinking about this early on in his career. He was always very concerned with legacy, how people perceived him. Like, he at times during this Tom Aspinall stuff has acted like, "I don't care. I don't strip me. Do you think I care about that?" And like, I think you care a lot about what people think of you, and especially about legacy. That's the whole reason he said he wanted that Stipe fight in the first place, was he wanted to like leave behind a certain legacy. But I also think he's always overestimated to what extent he gets to tell us who he is and what his legacy should be and how we should perceive him. And he always has sort of had that disconnect where he, like, remember,
So true.
back in those days where he was just like trying to really portray himself as the like a choir boy essentially. And you had people who knew him being you had Rashad telling you very early on, whether they were teammates at Jackson Winklejohn Gym, saying that's not who he is. He's putting on a face for you guys, and that ended up to be very much true. And even now, like toward the end of his career, where he's just sort of telling you like, hey, I'm gonna say I'm fighting Stipe because he's the greatest heavyweight, and kind of thinking the rest of us won't notice that he was 1 foot out the door and on the wrong side of 40 by the time you fought him. And like he really kind of thinks that he can just tell you, or he can craft it a certain way and then set it on the table, and
Yeah.
we're all just going to accept his version of it. And this kind of stuff is the thing that really interrupts that, because this is the stuff you'd probably just rather not see and rather not know about him. But it's at this point, it's so much a part of his story that you can't possibly ignore it.
It's a good time to bring up a comment he made on Instagram here, referring to that classic image we've talked about a number of times on this show. I don't know if you guys have seen this. Let me just try and get the font up here. It's a picture of all the champions, and you've talked about this a lot, Chuck, the 2011 era, and when they were all up there on the stage. All of them retired now, and John Bones, he shared this with this quote: "I guess everybody else gets to retire, just not when you're still dominating. Funny how that works. Forget personal goals, forget business ventures. Some folks really believe you should fight until they say you've had enough. Wild. Imagine thinking grown men shouldn't control his own destiny." And I think this is fitting, because
I mean,
that's
he could have come to that conclusion, like, at the end of the year. He could have, it's like he could have said,
Exactly.
I'm
I don't
done,
think anybody disagreed with his ability to
Yeah.
like decide for himself when his career was over. But why did we need to basically string Tom Aspinall and everybody else along for so long, just to then retire via a phone call to Dana White that he announces at a press conference from Baku? Like that's just such a weird way like, why couldn't you have done that after the Stipe fight if that's what you wanted to do? It makes no sense to just do this, and like you'd rob yourself of having that moment, that nice moment where you get to retire in the cage, or you get to retire when the cameras are all on you. Instead, you get Dana White being like, "Oh, BT Dub got a call from Jon Jones last night. He's retired." That's such a bizarre way to do it.
It's also like it's clearly affecting him. As much as you just said there, Ben, like he wants to control how we feel. He wants to control how people look at his career. Look at what's happening. Look at this tirade. Like he's obviously affecting him, how people are thinking about this. But Chuck, what do you think? Do you think the UFC have any feelings when they're seeing this? Like, this how unhinged he is now, and thinking, Jesus, we were really giving this guy the benefit of the doubt for a very long time. When obviously in February he wasn't taking it that seriously. Obviously now, obviously Thailand, everything. Like, we have countless examples of a guy not looking like he's preparing to fight. Do you think they have any kind of buyer's remorse in the hopes that he would have fought Aspinall here?
You would think so. And I mean, honestly, the way that, Dana, like there was no preconceived idea, even though we were all talking about, but there was obviously he's saying, he called me last night, he retired, zero fanfare to this whole thing. So I don't know how it went on, but I don't know how you can be anything but mad if you're Dana White, because I keep pointing this out because it was absurd. In 2024, he's on a victory tour for Jon Jones, defending this Miocic fight, which had already been on the radar for a full year. It ends up being on the radar for a full year before it actually happens. So the full extent of its absurdity is in play by the time it actually comes around. But the one guy who was on his side happens to be the promoter himself, Dana White, telling everybody he's the GOAT, he's the pound for pound king, you're crazy, arguing with him, all this stuff. And to then go on record afterwards and, institute basically the interim title, but to go on record afterwards and just keep guaranteeing, doubling down that this fight is happening. I don't know how this is one of the worst looks I can remember for, like, in terms of a fighter, a fighter and a fight and all the type of things with Dana's guarantees. It's one of the worst looks I've seen Dana have to suffer publicly, where it's like, wow, man, you lost that one. And this guy has screwed you before. He has screwed you before to the point where, UFC 151 comes to mind. I know that Jones likes to talk about that one, but there were a lot of times. What is this? The third time he's been stripped. I guess this time he's retiring, however you want to look at that. But he's been stripped before. He's put you in pickles before. So to kind of get back in the Jones camp and really double down on it, I mean, it's the egg on Dana's face at this point, right? Like, I just feel like he lost. He very publicly lost this.
But also, it leaves your heavyweight division in such a
Oh man,
rough
it's
spot,
horrible now.
you know, because it's like you already lost the lineal nature of the heavyweight title when Francis Ngannou left. You know, he was the lineal MMA heavyweight champion, and he walked away with that. And as far as MMA is concerned, he still is, you know, because he hasn't lost in MMA since then. But you have Jon Jones fight Cyril Gane for a vacant belt, and so it's like the belt that Jon Jones wins, he already didn't take from a champion, and then he's going to go and leave with that belt. And so now you got Tom Aspinall, another guy who didn't beat a champion, to become a champion. He just gets promoted to undisputed champion and is looking around like, now what? And the now what is kind of a bummer, man, because it's like, what do you have? Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane. It's kind of like, okay, fine. You know, like I still say if you could sign Francis Ngannou and get him back, it solves every single one of your problems. As the UFC.
If you go all the way back to the Ringer show we did, Pizzi, like a couple years ago,
it's crazy.
We kept going on about the Jones and Ngannou fight. We need this to happen, and I remember saying, I was like, you know what we're going to end up getting is Cyril Gane versus so and so. Like, we didn't know exactly what it'd be, and we laughed, and we're like, you know, it's so true though, that every time you go through these scenarios, you end up with like some distant consolation prize that you can't really even fathom yet. And we've arrived at that moment, boys. I mean, like, that's what we're getting. It's like Cyril Gane being thrust back into a shot. And at least there's Aspinall, because if it was if it was just complete journeymen now, guys who've been beating up each other for a long time, and that's what you're left with, it'd be a lot worse. But still, it's like that digressive, like, it reminds me of with the Conor McGregor thing when he went away. It's like we went so far from the original point, you know, when he went to the boxing ring and all these things were adding up, and we didn't get this because of this. And, you know, it's kind of like that. Like Ben just pointed it out. Like, it all goes back to Ngannou. The best thing they could do, but the UFC doesn't seem interested in this, and I don't even know the feasibility of this, but the best possibility would be like if you could get Francis Ngannou back. That would still be a huge fight. But short of that, the division is just going to be what it is now. There's nothing special about it.
Thanks for watching this video. Before you go, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for us. Also, give us a thumbs up, leave a nice comment. These things go a long way. And while you're here, do check out the rest of the channel. We've got live shows and full interviews, clips, and a whole lot more. We're doing big things here, and we appreciate your support very much.